Welcome to Shut Up and Sit. I'm Yedda a consciousness coach and consultant. I'm on a mission to bring mindfulness to the modern world. Each week, we will offer ancient healing practices, real-world examples, and the latest research in neurobiology and behavior change into fun conversation that invites you to wake up your highest self. Now, let's go shut up and sit. Welcome back to the Shut Up and Sit podcast. I'm Yedda, your fabulously flawsome host. I heard that word the other day, flawsome, which is meaning I'm awesome with lots of flaws. And that's kind of the way it goes being human beings, that we're all just doing what we can. We're doing the best we can with the level of awareness we're at. You guys know that. You've been showing up and listening, shutting up and sitting and listening to the show now. And it's just so great to be back here with you. I'm working on some kind of getting us out of the depths of the biology of belief in chapter 4. We've got a little talk today to go into, and we're kind of wrapping things up before we move into the next chapter, which is not about willpower. So that means we're going to get out of this belief conversation, because we've been in it for quite a few episodes. But you guys, this is the magic where it all happens. You get what you believe. I couldn't say it enough. You get what you believe. You heard me talk about it in the last episode. And if you want to get something different out of life, ask yourself, is what I'm believing getting me where I want to go? If it's not, what belief do I need to hold or have that's going to get me where I desire to go in life? And so last time we talked about the 4 choices that matter. And I did have to sit down and kind of condense and consolidate once I'm getting out of an old belief system and I'm making conscious choices to create new belief systems. Yes, I'm shutting up and sitting. I'm going into my unconscious and I'm in the theta brainwave and I'm using repetition and all these cool things to change a belief. Because remember, there's only 4 ways to change a belief: repetition, theta brainwave, energy psychology, or traumatic life event. And so we don't want you to have to go through a traumatic life event. And so the energy psychology, there's lots of stuff out there that we could get into, but we really are talking about in here. We do hit all 4 a little bit in this work, but we're really talking about shutting up and sitting. Mindfulness is going within yourself in silence and stillness on a daily basis. So that's your repetition. Accessing theta brainwave. Early in the morning, late at night, it's the most active, or you can call on guided imagery or music or different environmental things that can introduce the theta brainwave. But we're really getting you to learn there's an inner and there's an outer dynamic of how to do this work. I had a lady on a call last week, and she goes, well, from a faith perspective, I've my faith, my religion, I made a choice to give all of this. And as a Christian perspective, she said, to give all this to Jesus. And he just took all that. And I'm like, okay, well, but we still have something in our physical body called an ego. We do have free will. That's the whole beauty and this fascinating part of being human. And so today we're going to talk about the ego. And so my answer to her was, well, that's fantastic. And from a faith perspective, whatever your faith is, I'm not questioning your faith. Faith is a belief. I'm actually asking you, are your behaviors when you wake up every day, is your ego and are your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in alignment with what you believe or not? And are they getting you the results of what it is that you want in your life? Are you bringing your belief out in all you say and do in your behavior in a way that is inspiring other people to see the love in you? Or are you doing the very opposite? And I had a big question mark when I got into this work years ago around my own belief systems and religion. And well, that's fine. I can believe in something, but don't I still have to wake up every day and make decisions and choices that would put me in alignment with beliefs or not? And that kind of woke me up in this work, because I thought, I've met a lot of people in the mindfulness world, in the Christian world, in Muslim, in Hindu. I mean, I've met people from all over the world. I've traveled the world. And I've met some people who are loving and kind, and I've met some who aren't in all of those different areas of beliefs. So I started asking myself, so why is that? Why? I mean, because you would think, most people would think, well, if I believe this, then I'm now going to be a good person. But we still have an ego. And today we're talking about the 5 stages of what I call ego recovery. Okay, recovery, integration, invitation, whatever word you want to use. But the ego is not the enemy. I've said this, I'm going to keep saying it. The ego is not the enemy. It was a phenomenal title for a book that did wildly well. But the truth is the ego is not the enemy. The ego was created to protect you, to serve you, to keep you safe. It's got a job. It's part of who you are. But what we're doing with this work is we're inviting the ego to stop working so hard to protect you and create separation and dysfunction and drama. And we're saying, can I just give you a new job? Can I upgrade you? Remember I talked about this before. Can I give you a makeover? So a lot of times in this work, I will ask clients, find two images. One image is if we were casting, all right, whether it was a Broadway play or we were going big screen on the movies, right, movie screen. If we had to cast a character to play your ego when it is in its limiting belief, when it is not doing anything good, it is doing something good, it believes it's protecting you. But when that part of you comes out to create separation and protection, who would you cast to play your ego when it is in its, I don't even like the words negative, but when it's in that self-protecting mechanism where all it does is create despair, drama, dysfunction, death, whatever you want to call it. Who would you cast to come in and play your ego? And I want you to think of somebody famous, okay? They can be dead or alive. Who would you call in to play your ego? And I love this exercise because here's the beauty of this. We're not getting rid of him or her. We just want to know. And it gives me such great insight. You know, I'll have clients say, Caesar would come in and be my ego and, or different characters in history. And some of them are playful and fun and some of them are just downright dramatic and all about destruction. But it gives me an insight and it'll give you an insight into what energy comes up. When you go into protection, what do you do? Do you avoid? Remember, we talked about the ways we manage our emotions. Do you avoid? Do you go into confrontation? Do you numb? And what would that character do? And so in the last episode, I talked about a photo that my dad had sent me from 31 years back. And on that day that we had been together. And when I looked at that, one of the characters I actually have used in this exercise for myself, who would have played my ego when she was really in her prime, would have been Angelina Jolie from Girl Interrupted. And that should give you a really beautiful sneak peek into what was going on inside of my psyche at that point in my life when I was just kind of at this epicenter of a real suffering. And so we get you to do this exercise because I want you to start to, and I even have clients print that picture out. Because when he or she is in the room, you've heard me talk about this on one of the episodes before. I had a client, Courtney Love was her image. Courtney, like Kurt Cobain, Courtney Love, who was, really hardcore, strung out, hung out in many ways before she kind of got a makeover. And so when you see that objectively, and this is what mindfulness is sitting and contemplating and going, gosh, a lot of this energy is here right now. What is he or she trying to do to get my needs met? That I might need to, think about this, it's a casting call. I might need to find another character to come in and play this person, this role, but I need another character. I'm going to rewrite the story. I no longer want Angelina Jolie, Girl Interrupted. Who do I want to bring down front and center? Now that's the next question. When we recover your ego, when we get her all of her needs met and we say, now we're going to turn all that Girl Interrupted energy, we're not going to put it into separation and backflips out the window. We're going to turn it around and we're going to actually use it to create connection with ourselves, with our source, with silence, with shutting up and sitting and being able to name and be with all of our feelings and our thoughts before we go jumping out into the world and throwing them on everyone else. That's what mindfulness gives you the capacity to do. But what would she look like if she got all of her shit together and she could go out in the world and she could get up and function properly? So that's the next character I have people find someone in history. Archetypal energy is really great for this work because you then get to ask yourself who's showing up today. When I put on the tight jeans and the high heels and the white t-shirt and I want to light a cigarette and get in the car and turn on AC/DC, I know who's driving the show. And I know if she steps out of this bed and she runs the day to day, we are going downhill quick. Okay. Could be fun. Don't get me wrong. I can keep elements of her energy, but when it's full on, that's my wake up call that I've got some really deep unmet needs that I need to take care of before I even walk out this house today. Okay. And my practice of shutting up and sitting every day, even if it's for 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 50 minutes, wherever you're at, it's to get you into conversation with the ego so you keep it recovered and you keep it present and you keep it in your capacity to work with it, to get it to help you create connection, not separation. So here's the 5 stages of ego recovery. Now that you kind of have your characters, okay? The first stage that you know you're moving towards ego recovery is you are now starting to realize you can bring order, control, and structure into your life. Okay. A lot of times when our ego is wildly disproportionately out of control, we're lacking structure, order, calm, clear, concise ways of showing up. We've talked about this before in the episodes, or in the show, but your environment, if you look around you, and I look around all my environments, everything that I put myself in, it says to me, it radiates love to me, and I look at it and I radiate love back to it. I don't have anything in my awareness, and I don't want to be around anything that does not feel like it's communicating the energy of love and joy and connection. And so you start to notice the ego starts to recover when you're desiring a little bit more clarity, a little bit more order, a little bit more structure. And what I want you to think about with this, and again, these are listed in the book, so I'm going down them, but if you have your own copy, you can get really into the nitty gritty around this. But the ego is there to help you do that. So instead of the ego creating all the chaos, he or she is the very one that's going to help you turn that energy on a dime and pivot right back in and make sure it's all put together and it's exactly what it needs to be. You're now parenting that smaller wounded self as it's becoming more of an adolescent and growing up and leaving home, if you will, to go out into the adult world to get a job and to get it all together. So we're now in the internal dialogue of parenting ourselves. And so what we do, and you get the ego is really great at this, is to help you really bring that structure in and say, okay, look, we don't need to be out there, until 1 a.m. We got to get up in the morning, go to work. Ask your ego to help step in and instead of make things harder, make it easier. And so what you'll find is, and then all of a sudden I realized, wow, it's like my ego's waking up, and it's like, the girl interrupted was like, I'm showered, I'm ready to go. I'm sitting here with my coffee, getting ready to go out the door to work. And I'm like, wow, who is this person? Because this is part of yourself that you've not really been connected to. When I said this in the last episode, when we get wounded, we actually split off and disconnect from ourselves. There's a disassociation that happens. So now you're coming back into this integration, okay? And so we do need to confess that there is an ego, there's an aspect of our ego, and the ego loves control, but we're not giving it the illusion of control. We're literally giving it some things to control. The trash has got to go out on Wednesday. It's almost like giving chores, creating a chore chart, if you will, in your mind of these are things I need to do to live and survive in the world. That's the ego's job. It protects you in a way that it can do it through connection instead of separation. And so when you feel what's there and you talk to your ego and you say, you know what, I don't want to force you and tell you that you cannot act out. But if you could have a conversation with yourself like you would your own child or a colleague or a close family or friend, and you stayed in constant communication with them and you knew what their needs were and you were able to anticipate them and make sure you could show up and be present with them, it's no different than with your own ego. So in this first step of bringing control, order, and structure to your life, you literally make kind of a confession to the ego, I need you. I need you to help me with this structure. I need you to help me see where the dangers and pitfalls are. I want to listen to you, but we got to do it without acting out and lashing out. We got to be in constant communication. So shutting up and sitting is listening not only to the silence and stillness, but when the constant mental chatter is coming, having a dialogue and talking back to that part of yourself that's like, I got it. We're going to be okay. So you're really getting into a parental narrative with the ego. All right. Step number 2. So this is cool. Egos love this one. Establish a conquest, a clear purpose for getting out of bed every morning that your ego can really begin to connect with. Something greater than yourself. So your ego, when it's right-sized and recovered, if you wake up every day and you're running a nonprofit and it's for inner city youth and teaching them, business skills and strategies so that they can grow up and take care of themselves when they get older, hey, get your ego to really connect with that and use the ego to create connection to say, we're getting out of bed every morning because we got people out there that need us. And so for me, when I started making that connection, and that's why I'm here talking to you guys today, I could have been like, oh man, screw it. I don't want to go down to the studio today. I got to find parking in the city. I got to take care of all these other things. It's going to cost time, energy, and money. I don't want to do it. But my ego says, we're getting up, we're getting our stuff together, we're getting in the car and we're going, because there are people out there who need to hear what we have to say. So my ego is a part of everything you guys are experiencing. If I told you it wasn't, and I didn't have an ego, be very careful if someone's like, I got rid of my ego. Oh, wow. No, you didn't. You'll never get rid of your ego. So again, I said this in the last episode or last lesson. It's when people go, I'm really enlightened, I don't have an ego. Run fast and far, far, far away, okay? Because nobody is enlightened until we're all enlightened, okay? There's the news flash. So you can sit on a mountaintop, you can sit in an ashram, you can do whatever, you can go to the jungles of South America and take ayahuasca. I don't give a shit. If you think you're enlightened, guess what? You're not enlightened until we all are. That's the way it works, because guess what? We're all connected. So I don't get the freedom and the luxury and the joy to achieve something while the rest of the world is suffering. It's total bullshit. It's lies. Because your suffering is my suffering and my suffering is your suffering. That's the way this works at the deepest level. So give your ego a job. There are still people suffering. Get up out of bed and let's take our egos out into the world and go, hey, I know you're suffering, but I've found a little bit of freedom and I want to help you find it too, because I know you're not going to find it if I don't share it, and I'm not going to find it if you don't find it. Because it's the law of reciprocity, people. That's the way this works. So give your ego something to get out of bed for. And then, and I put these bullet points down. It sounds really silly that you'd need bullet points, but you do, because we've got to stay awake and aware and remember. We got to come back and read it over and over and over again. That this also has to be something that will challenge you to grow and evolve. So when I come down here to the studio, do I know the content? Sure. But did I have to challenge myself to get up and do? I mean, if you guys knew what I had to learn, and Robin's on the other side of the camera every time we do this, when we started this, I had no clue what I was doing. I mean, the digital world, the social media, the camera, the ClickFunnels, the marketing, the light. I mean, there's so much stuff. But I thought, okay, there are other people out there. So I had to force myself to grow and evolve, because I was just sitting on the couch for years doing all this work and going, well, life's pretty good, but life wasn't great. You know why? Because I was holding on to all of what I had been doing to heal myself and watching the whole world still suffering, and something in me, my ego was like, we got to do something. That's not your soul. Okay, that's not your spirit. Your ego is the one that's like, we have to do something. So the second part of this is, what's the conquest? Give the ego a new role to step into. So my ego and I talk all the time, and I'm like, girl, we're working on this art of awakening. We are waking people up. We are truth telling, truth seeking. We are walking the edge of these different worlds. And so I do say that. It's actually on my LinkedIn profile. When people are like, what do you do? I say, well, I'm an edge walker and I'm a truth seeker and a truth teller. And that little kind of girl interrupted in me. She's like, oh, that's kind of a cool title. I think I can be down with that. And I'm like, yeah, that's a really cool title. And it gives her an ability to walk in the room and still say and bring things up and out into the room that people don't necessarily want to hear or see, but she doesn't have to do it with grenades and a bunch of F-bombs. She can do a few F-bombs. I still give her permission. But she's now integrated in the process. So I really want you to hear that. You don't have to stop being who you are to really figure out and find who you are and take that out in the world and help others. So give your ego a conquest. Give it a purpose to work with you. So, and sometimes mine goes, you gotta get your ass out of bed. You're gonna oversleep and you're gonna miss. And I'm like, okay, all right. So my ego is there for a reason. All right. Now, step number 3. This is the other part, and this might sound a little bit intense, but I want you to hear this. Confront your issues and the source of them. That's one of the jobs you give your ego. Your ego is always going to be the truth seeker and the truth teller for you. You don't have to be the one that creates confrontation and go out into the world and become the adversarial kind of superhero. And I'm not saying you got to be the front of the room person all the time, but in your own mind you do. And your ego is the one that you're going to give permission to say, we got to hit this head on, and we've got to sit down and we got to get to the root of what's going on. And I have conversations with her where I'm like, what are you seeing that I'm not? Because your ego's had a radar for a really long time to scan everything going on in and around you to try to keep you safe. And sometimes mine will be like, you know what you didn't pick up on in that conversation? Or you know what was happening over here with this situation? I listen to her. So I'm not shutting her up and putting her in the corner and saying you don't matter. I'm saying, what perspective do you hold from the limiting belief that you created that can now come back into the picture to actually help me? Now, what do I mean by that? Because you're like, well, wait a minute, Yedda, you said you got to get rid of the limiting belief. No, I said you got to rewind, rewrite, and respond with new narrative and a new story to tell a new story to create a new belief. However, let's use this as an example. If your ego says, I'm going to create the belief I'm not enough, and then it's going to keep you safe by telling you to show up in ways that communicates to people you're not enough. It means literally you're going to walk in a room and do things that people go, well, this person is not enough of something, somehow, somewhere. And the ego goes, great, then we're not going to get all this added responsibility. No one's going to expect us to do all these things. We're not going to risk humiliation. So now the ego you're giving it a new job, but what you're saying is, hey, wait a minute. But there was value in how you showed up. So we're now going to use the ego to say, all right, well, what if I show up as enough and you still are able to scan and see what's going on and help me see things from that perspective? Again, remember I talked about this last time, your wounds become your wisdom. So in the I'm not enoughness, you probably you cultivated a capacity to also see not enoughness in other people. So when you heal I'm not enough, the ego comes in and integrates back into it and helps you confront the not enoughness, but then you take that out into the world and you say, where is there other places, people, and things that are suffering with not enoughness that our enoughness can go in and help them wake up and help them find their enoughness? So a lot to dig into, and I usually go into that usually in a one-on-one conversation. But I want you all to understand the ego is there to give you information, to help you confront, to help you conquer the limiting belief. But then it's using compassion and kindness to say, but you don't walk in the room now and go, well, I'm enough, and now I don't talk to anyone who's not enough. Your ego says, I know I'm enough, I've cultivated it, and as I walk in the room and still see that other people are not enough, I actually create a connection with them and let my enoughness now help them find their enoughness. So I want you guys to think about that for a second. So you need to really, and I need is a strong word here, okay? You need to give your ego permission to tell you the truth and to tell you the truth about what it still sees in situations and people and places and things that are suffering, where you could go in and your healing and your new belief system can actually help and invite them into a possibility that they too can do the healing and hold that belief. And we want to, because the ego's been used to living in denial for a long time. So confrontation is not meant to be aggressive or ugly or negative. It's just ask yourself, what do I see? What else is going on here? Which moves us into number 4, which I just kind of alluded to a little bit, conquering what you have confronted. So I don't need to walk into the room and you don't need to walk into the room and go, well, I've conquered my belief that I am no longer crazy. Because the truth is, if you keep still talking about and telling people what belief you've conquered, just like the Enlightenment, no, you haven't, because you're still talking about it. It's just like people who have money don't talk about money. People who are healthy don't talk about crazy. I mean, think about that for a second. So, and my arms are crossed kind of in this serious, like, really, I want you to think about this. Your ego is now going to help you conquer what it's confronted in its own mind out in the world. And we're now getting our instincts and our intellect to come together and integrate. That silent, still knowingness of shutting up and sitting is also holding space for the instinctual knowingness of the ego that says, okay, I hear what you're saying. Fine, we can shut up and sit down. We can get really into this mindfulness thing, Yedda. However, we can't sit here forever and let the world pass us by. That's the parts where there's a both and the ego says, let's go out in the world and do something. Because the truth is the ego, what it wants most more than anything in the world is connection, is community, is compassion. It knows intuitively that that's the truth of who we are. And when you bring it into your narrative as your greatest ally, it will light up the world with connection. It will not let you sit forever on the mountaintop because it knows that that's not enough. So we don't want to swing from all the way over here to all the way over here. We want to bring this ego in and recover the wholeness of who we are. And that allows you, which is the final thing under point number 4, is to believe in yourself, to stand up for yourself, and to remain firm. And when I say remain firm, there are times now where my ego's like, no, Yedda, you're not doing that. Nope, we've done that before. We know where that takes us. And now when my ego started to get wise, I started going, holy cow, you really know how to take care of me. And she does. She steps in and says, no, honey, we're not going down that road. Turn this way. Same for you guys, girls, doesn't matter what language you're using. When your ego is in a recovery, right-sized, real relational place of true integrated relatedness with who you really are, you go into warp speed on what you can do out in the world, which takes me to step number 5. Best part of the ego is, number 5 says, celebrate, throw a party, and rejoice your victory. So I still have fun. And this was the part that was really missing for me in the work of mindfulness in the beginning. It was so serious. You couldn't have fun. You couldn't eat food that was fatty. You couldn't eat meat. You can't drink alcohol. You can't. I'm like, God, deprivation. Like I could just feel myself shriveling and constricting talking to you. And hey, if that's a lane you want to go down for your own belief systems around how you want to eat, how you want to live from a health perspective and what you want to do, that is totally your choice. But I will tell you this, when you're in a mindset of deprivation and I can't have and I can't do, and you're living in a dogma or a community or a belief system that tells you all of these things are off the table, you can never do them again, or you won't get where you need to be, that's still a very extreme cognitive distortion. Remember all the way back in the beginning of the book, we talked about that. Your ego loves a party. And you can have all kinds of healthy, good live music. If that's your thing, great. Don't despair and tell your ego all that shit's off the table. Because what you will do is you will trigger him or her, and she will or he will bide his time until all of a sudden remember this, every imbalance is perfectly balanced. So if you go from a life of, woohoo, ego, girl interrupted, and then I go to the nun, Sister Teresa, guess what? Eventually, she's going to pop her head back out. So we don't go from here all the way to over here. That's just that's that whole imbalance of energy. We integrate and we actually give praise, and we tell the ego, thank you so much for making life interesting and fun. That's what I wanted the work of mindfulness to be. The title Shut Up and Sit wasn't some marketing ploy. It was literally reclaiming the narrative of punishment to permission. It's also solving this work is solving the problem of, well, what do I do with my ego? Well, now I still get to get dressed up. I go out and I'll have a nice dinner. I'll have a glass of wine. I'll tell myself I can have 2 on a Friday or Saturday night. And that's enough. But those are places I had to get to in my belief system. Maybe your equation is going to be 0. But when I do know this, when we live in a place of deprivation and we really get into, we're going to renounce everything pleasurable in life. Okay, if that's where you want to go, you may by all means try that. The majority of us that live in the world, that is not a reality that I see most people either being curious about, wanting to lean into, or even think about going into. So you give praise for your success, that you're rewiring these new belief systems, you're showing up in a new way, and you invite your ego in and say, how do we want to celebrate this? Sometimes I take myself out to lunch or to dinner or whatever. Sometimes I take myself shopping, but I'm consciously awake and aware of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I'm meeting a need for myself that I've taken back from somebody or something else to meet for me. And I begin to kind of merge the energy of the soul, the mind, the body, and all of this kind of trinity comes together. And then this wholeness, and I got news for all of us, the wholeness is already here. Just like in the last episode, the healing's already happening. But when the ego tricks us with shadows and disconnects the mind and body from the spirit, what happens is we're living 2 different lives. And now we're bringing this all back into the same room with mindfulness and shutting up and sitting down and going, oh, I got an ego, I got a mind, I got a body, I got all this silence, I got this cool shit. It's going on inside of every single one of us. And we start to merge all that energy together. The recovery process starts to get really fun. So I don't do this work because I want to live a somber, serious life of, celibacy and silence and, that's not, and sobriety. If that speaks to you, awesome. It doesn't speak to me. And so where we begin to recover is there's going to be an ego with us until we take our last breath and leave this physical body. That's the way it works. So you can't get rid of it. You don't kill it. You don't put it in prison. If you do try to do that, it is going to come back tenfold. So wouldn't it be a lot easier if you could just say, oh, cool, let me kind of go down these steps and start to say, and the steps, you know what, we use steps 5, 3, 4, whatever. They're easy to remember. People love steps. The brain loves logical chunked patterns of information. It's just a massive computer. So this is just another program. If you decide there's 6 steps of your own ego recovery, by all means, add number 6. These were the 5 that I found. If you decide there's 3, make it 3. But we use chunks of information so that people can begin to understand, and you can begin to give new program and new data to kind of upgrade the software, if you will, of your mind. So we've got these 5 stages of recovery, where I'm going to kind of recap these really quickly. So number 1, bring control, order, and structure into your life. You're going to invite the ego to help you with that. Number 2, you're going to ask the ego to establish a conquest, a clear purpose for getting out of bed every morning that it can help you with. Number 3, you're going to ask your ego to confront your issues and the source of them, and to tell you to be on the lookout of some of these things that you need to just keep an eye on. Number 4, you're going to ask the ego to help you conquer what you've confronted in your own mind and in your own belief system, and go out in the world and empower other people to do the same with your new belief system by its presence alone. Okay? I'm not asking you to go out and hand out pamphlets of shut up and sit. I'm asking you to go out and be the new belief system and be in connection with community to help other people confront and also conquer. And then lastly, let your ego have some fun. Let it throw a party. Let it celebrate. Let it be in a place of joy. Ultimately, we all say we want more joy in our life. And then we go into doing the exact opposite. So we think suffering, if suffering, and this is what's so fascinating about mindfulness to me, what I found in the beginning, people never talked about using mindfulness to sit with your suffering and learn how to hold it and kind of get past the illusion of it and let go of the shadow of the ego. It was, well, I'm miserable and I'm suffering. And then they would go into these other practices where they would be miserable and suffering. I don't want to sit in the lotus position for 10 hours on a cold, hard floor in the middle of a vacant room in the middle of an empty forest to try to find myself. Maybe for a few minutes, but I wanted to have all of it. And so the ego stages of recovery, these 5 stages, are really, really important. So I really want you all to understand and know the value of bringing the ego and recovering him or her back into the experience of these belief systems, and know that they are necessary. The ego is necessary, and it can get an upgrade. It can take a new belief system out into the world. It can work with you. It can create connection. It can create community and compassion. And so this mindful exercise of finding your characters. Now, sometimes I'll tell clients, just draw out a little stage on a piece of paper. And then, who are your characters? And you might have more than 2. Yeah, once you decide who's the limiting belief and then who's the healthy belief, you might decide to put on different masks or different characters and play different roles. And you're allowed to do that, but have some fun with it. Your ego is just a character, and it wants to play different roles. So I want you to have some fun with this. Mindfulness is not meant to be boring or in a place of suffering. Mindfulness can be doing exactly what I told you, sitting quietly and in a creative way, constructing the stage of your life and looking at the characters you play. Which ones do a really good job? Which ones would you like to get some training for them, for their acting skills to come up to speed a little? Which ones would you like to just rewrite the whole role? You are the director, you are the producer, and you are the actors in your entire life. You are the one that can decide how to get all of this into integration and recover parts of yourself and bring it back into the world in a way that shows this new belief system is coming about, is being created in you. And that's what I love about this work. I love that we get a little bit of freedom. We're talking about this in a different way. If you're one of those hardcore, really whatever dogmatic people, and you're like, oh, Yedda, that is not what I learned. You know what? This is what I learned. And I'm just here to share and invite people into a curiosity and a creativity that mindfulness shows up in lots of ways. And mindfulness is as simple as going within, but the ego is the part that's going to take what you find within out into the world and make things happen. They've got to be in right relationship and recovery back into this wholeness. The definition of success, it's in the book, is, you know what it is? It's not your bank account. It's not what you look like. It's not your relationship status. It's nothing other than removing the barriers that prevent you from being in this present moment. That's it. If you can cultivate the practice of shutting up and sitting and going with them, figuring out what you think, what you feel, what behavior you have, which behavior you'd like to go out into the world with to create a feeling, to produce new thoughts. If you can remove all the barriers on the inner world that are preventing you from being right here, right now, present with who you really are, that's success, because that means you have unlimited freedom and empowerment to go out into the outer world and have fun and bring all kinds of characters and produce plays and do amazing things to help all of humanity. And that's really what this work is all about. So I'm excited to be here today. It's always just, exciting. It's fun because you know what? This is the play of my life. And today we just wrote a scene where I was able to show up and shut up and sit and talk to you a little bit about these different components of recovering the ego. I love talking about the ego. I'm not afraid of it anymore. I love my ego. Sometimes she does a great job working with me. Sometimes I've got to just reel her back in and be like, hey, psst, psst, you got to come on back in here and sit down for a minute. And then sometimes she'll be like, hey, Yedda, you've been sitting for a really long time. We got to get out of the house and go do something really fun and interesting. That's part of being human. There's no finite, perfect way. It's not perfect. It's not permanent. It's not personal. Let your ego work with you instead of against you. And the only person that's holding the ego back from working with you is you. Always a pleasure to be here with you today. I could keep going and going and going. I know last episode I went a little long, so I want to kind of honor the time here when it's just me. I know you love hearing my voice. I know that, so I'm not worried about the length of the time and what I have to say. And you know why I say that? Because I just don't do negative self-talk anymore. And I'm here, I'm showing up, I'm serving my purpose. I am so excited that it's going to allow you to go out and conquer and confront and serve your purpose in the world. That's why we're all doing it. So we're not enlightened until we're all enlightened. Remember that. When you do this work, when I do this work, it has a multiplying effect, and that factor goes out into the world. Our healing helps heal the entire world. That's why I do this, and that's why I'm asking you to do the work alongside with me. So next episode coming up, we're going to be talking about the 3 steps to inner freedom. And now you understand why I talk about them in steps and chunks. And we're just going to move right in. Now we're crawling up out of beliefs, and we're starting to move into the second half of the book and the work. It gets really interesting and fun. We're going to be talking about the inner freedom, what it looks like, what it feels like, how to cultivate that more. We do have some guests coming, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I will see you on the next episode. And until then, have a fantastic day and do something fun. Invite your ego to have some fun. I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
May you know goodness. May you know peace. May you know contentment. May you be